Your kid comes up missing, you're scared, you're worried.
Without any information as to where Riley and Breezy went, it really was a needle in a haystack.
This case took a toll. I mean, it consumed our lives.
Whoever did this believed that he had done such a good job that the police would never, ever discover him.
This person had a plan to get rid of the bodies. I mean, it was very heinous and very evil, and that was incredibly frustrating to us.
Why would someone do that to two teenagers?
It was a whirlwind of fear, and it unleashed something we never even fathomed.
Riley Powell and Breezy Otteson were reported missing on January 3rd of 2018. And they were reported missing by Breezy's and Riley's families. The information that the family relayed to law enforcement was that Riley and Breezy were in a relationship, and that on December 29th of 2017, Riley and Breezy were at Breezy's family's house in Tooele County, and they had left later that night. They take about a 45-minute drive from Eureka on a very desolate highway in Riley's Jeep to return home to Eureka later that night. But from what their families had indicated, they never returned home.
Breezy and Riley went to school together, and it was through that summer that Breezy and Riley had started to date. Riley had purchased a ring for Breezy with the intent to propose to Breezy. I knew that they were very young, but I supported them in whatever they needed to feel that completeness and have some stability in their life.
Breezy kind of mellowed Riley out and brought him around to being a better person. And we haven't heard from him, and it's just wasn't them, so you automatically knew something was wrong.
We're thinking you got two young kids that are traveling along this long, desolate highway trying to get back home in the middle of winter. It's cold, it's icy, and we're wondering if there's a possibility that they may have slidden off the road. They may have had car troubles.
Eureka is a really small town. The population is less than 1,000 people, and it's about an hour outside of Salt Lake City. It is kind of a ghost town.
Eureka's kind of nestled in between these mountains. It's kind of in a canyon there. It was an old mining town. There are hills, there are trees, there are several offshoots, roads that go in all different directions. And without any information as to where Riley and Breezy went, it really was a needle in a haystack for us.
We don't know if they're going to be able to survive, a night or two. Do they have rations? Do they have food? Do they have water? So our sense of urgency was high.
Time was against us. So We really felt the pressure on this one. We conducted searches throughout these different trails and in the mountains, utilized search and rescue to look for these kids.
We were just kind of taken aback by the vastness of how big this was going to be.
And it ultimately didn't turn up anything. So Riley and Breezy's photos and photos of the Jeep were put out to the media. Breezy's family made a social media account for the missing kids so that people could be aware.
Both Riley and Breezy were active on Facebook, so cops subpoenaed the records for all of their social media accounts, wondering if just maybe it might help find where they were.
But the process of obtaining information from Facebook is not something that occurs overnight. It actually takes several months. And so we have to press forward, we have to move on.
There are no words to describe the despair, the helplessness in not knowing if the teens had gone off the road and they were stranded somewhere, and it is the middle of winter. The helplessness in not being able to just find them, help them, bring them home.
All kinds of things were going through our mind at the time. We weren't sure.
Breezy and Riley's relationship had its ups and downs. Breezy had recently broke up with a long-term boyfriend, and although the relationship was over, there was a lot of insecurity between both Breezy and Riley.
We were scared that, there may have been some kind of a fight or a, altercation between Riley and Breezy where they could have, gotten off the side of the road. One of them could have walked off, or they split up, or something. Then on January 9th, we were able to locate the Jeep in an area called Cherry Creek. It's approximately 15 miles from Eureka, out in this vast desert off the side of the road.
A search and rescue member went up in a helicopter searching the area, and they spotted the Jeep.
But when they found the Jeep and there was no Breezy or Riley, everybody was confused.
Our hope was that in finding the Jeep, we would find the kids. The Jeep was the key. So when the Jeep was found and there was no Breezy and Riley, it threw us for a whole new loop. Who's to say if we would find him or not? It was a whirlwind of unknown and fear, and it unlocked and unleashed something we never even fathomed.
"17-year-old Breezy Otteson and 18-year-old Riley Powell had been missing for 10 days before Riley's Jeep was found abandoned at the Cherry Creek Reservoir. But there was no sign of Breezy and Riley. It made no sense that either one of them would just abandon this vehicle. Investigators wondered what could have happened. Why did they disappear?
When we looked inside the Jeep, we noticed that All of the belongings, their clothing, the blankets, Breezy's overnight bag, they were all thrown in the back in the cargo area, which struck us as odd.
The obvious question is raised is why would you not take these with you if you're stuck and you're trying to walk somewhere in this cold weather for help?
Walking around to the back of the Jeep, we then noticed that there was a ratchet tie-down strap that was camo-colored. It was hanging in the back left leaf spring and was broken off.
This led to a lot more questions. Were they used to tow the truck by Riley? Were they used to tow the truck by someone else? Who used those straps?
The windows were down and both tires on the passenger side were flat. We observed slashes on the tire. They appeared to be from either a screwdriver or a knife. They appeared to be intentional. So when we put all this stuff together with the tires, the windows down in the cold weather, all the clothing identification in the back, and we're thinking that there could be foul play involved here.
After reviewing the Jeep and the surrounding area, it was clear to investigators that whatever happened to Riley and Breezy, whoever did it believed that they had done such a good job to hide the vehicle that they left things behind, believing the police would never, ever discover it.
When they found the Jeep and they weren't there, and we'd put a reward out for them, $5,000 reward. And we posted the posters all around town.
I was numb, but I didn't want to break down. I knew we just needed to bring them home.
Then, within a few days, one of the neighbors in the community came forward. She stated that she saw a man named Lee Shepard towing Riley's blue Jeep right around the time of New Year's, right in the middle when Riley and Breezy were reported missing.
Interestingly, Lee Shepard was the boyfriend of Riley's biological mother, Misty, and he lived on the property that Misty owned.
Riley wasn't quite one. He was taken away by the state because his biological mother and father were druggies, and so they were going to be adopted out, so I more or less took him over. And he lived with us.
Riley and his mom, Misty, they had a complicated relationship. Riley had been taken from her, but being that they were in a small town and it's his mom, they did have a relationship which really didn't make the rest of his family very happy. They felt that perhaps she was a bad influence on Riley.
I'd definitely have her out of his life. She definitely wasn't a role model.
So there were a lot of questions. Was there a family dispute we didn't know about? Was there some sort of argument that took place? Why would Lee Shepard be seen towing this vehicle?
We asked Lee and Misty to come down to the Tooele County Sheriff's Office and speak with us, and if they could help us get any information on finding Riley and Breezy.
Misty said that she last saw Riley on the day he went missing.
Misty said there had been some sort of an argument with Lee and Riley, There had been some words exchanged that got kind of heated. Misty's claiming that Riley owes Lee some money. That tells us, there's a possibility of motive here.
So law enforcement had the search warrant issued, and that search warrant was executed on the property where Misty and Lee lived.
When we were on Lee's and Misty's property, we found a ratchet tie-down strap that was camel colored that was similar to the one that was found on Riley's Jeep.
After finding those straps, police wondered, would this be the evidence they needed to solve the case and find Breezy and Riley? Did Lee and Misty murder Breezy and Riley? If so, where are the bodies?
Riley and Breezy were still missing. And on January 16, 2018, we executed a search warrant on Riley's biological mother's house and her boyfriend, Lee Shepard. We found tie-down straps matching those found attached to Riley's Jeep. That, along with the reports of a possible argument or debt, and we're thinking we need to dig into Lee further to see if maybe there was some involvement.
Lee did state that he towed a vehicle on the day that Riley went missing. However, it was a Nissan, and it had a shell on it. It was his girlfriend Misty's sister's vehicle. And it did resemble the vehicle that Riley drove. However, it wasn't Riley's vehicle that he was towing.
And he says he got a ratchet tie-down strap that was camel colored in the same store as Riley. And that's why they were similar to the ones that were found on Riley's Jeep.
In addition, Lee said he knew nothing about Breezy and Riley's disappearance. He said in no way, shape, or form was he involved in anything that had to do with the missing teens.
So after the search warrant and speaking with Lee and Misty, we determined that there just wasn't enough evidence to prove that Lee and Misty were involved in the disappearance of these kids. So we had to move on and look for more clues.
At this point, the police are basically at zero. They have no body, no suspect, no real solid evidence of a crime that happened. They're literally starting over.
In this case, definitely took a toll, I think, on all of us. I mean, it consumed our lives to where that's all we thought about 24 hours a day.
I have spent thousands of hours on this case. It really made me question, whether I wanted to continue a career in investigations because it took so much out of me
because it's been a couple of weeks and we're thinking, okay, that's a long time. Maybe they aren't alive. And we thought whoever did this really, really went to great lengths to hide the bodies and not get caught.
Eventually, after a few weeks, investigators got the results of the subpoena for the social media information for Riley and Breezy. And when they reviewed it, it showed that the last message Riley had sent was to a 34-year-old woman named Morgan Henderson.
We learned that on December 29th, Morgan reached out to Riley. She said, "Hey, I'm here alone at my house in Mammoth. You can come by if you want." This was the last conversation that Riley had with anyone, as far as we knew.
I never knew who Morgan was at all. No idea. You can have older friends, I guess, but that was the last person that they had talked to, so that raises some flags there that, something wasn't quite right.
We were familiar with Morgan and her boyfriend, Jared Baum, who she lived with.
Morgan had a checkered past. She had been in and out of jail a couple times, and she was a known drug user. We also knew Jared Baum. He had been in jail longer than he had been free in his lifetime. He is a drug user. We know that he likes weapons, but we didn't really know what the relationship was between Morgan and Riley. And so we felt that we needed to go to Morgan's house and ask her more questions as to what happened. Did Riley show up?
So I remember going to the house. Jared and Morgan are outside. We're talking back and forth. Both of them stated, no, we've never talked to Riley and Breezy, never met them. But Morgan was always looking to Jared before she answered. She would look up at him, then look back at us, and then look back at Jared, almost as if she was, is that the right answer you want me to give?
But when we confronted them with a Facebook conversation, she begins to say, yeah, I spoke to him, but he never arrived. He never got here. And I don't know where he went since.
That was a big red flag for the police. They didn't know what was true.
We ultimately decided that we didn't have enough evidence to arrest them or to even bring them into the police department. And so we let them go.
The police were running out of theories, and they were desperate for some sort of lead that could be a break in the case. So they also looked into Breezy and Riley's financial background, reviewing bank statements, basically looking to find any clues to turn their focus a different direction.
Several months into this investigation, we found that the last transaction that Riley had on his account was purchasing fuel from a gas station in Tooele.
We went to that gas station and we found surveillance video.
The footage showed Riley pumping gas, going in, paying for it. What was interesting was that there was no Breezy. And when Riley left the gas station, instead of heading towards Eureka, which is where Breezy and Riley had said they were going to go, he headed the opposite direction.
Where's Breezy? We thought, was there some kind of a fight or a, altercation between Riley and Breezy?
Could Riley be involved in hurting Breezy? In reviewing the CCTV, detectives saw that Riley left the gas station. Instead of heading towards Eureka, he headed towards Mammoth, where Morgan Henderson lived. The last person Riley ever sent messages to in social media before the teens disappeared. And there was no Breezy in the CCTV footage. Where could she be?
The good thing about getting that surveillance was it gave us somewhat of a time frame of when they were last seen, the night Riley and Breezy went missing. But we weren't able to prove exactly where Riley was going.
Investigators wondered, what does this mean? Did Riley actually go to Morgan's? Were police maybe on the right track with their suspicions of Morgan? And at this point, everybody really wanted to understand what the relationship was between Morgan and Riley.
We had learned that Riley had met Morgan that summer before Breezy and Riley had started to date. And Riley and Morgan started hanging out and had a relationship. The dynamic of their relationship was really odd. Considering if she was in her 30s, he was a teenager.
At this point, does that mean Morgan has something to do with their disappearance? Did Morgan and Riley do something to Breezy?
Then, on March 25th, 2018, a traffic stop was conducted on Morgan. Police found some weapons in the car she was driving that included some knives. And so they were able to take Morgan into custody. We felt like this was our opportunity to be able to get more information out of Morgan.
So when Morgan was being interviewed again by investigators, she sticks to the same story initially. But she eventually starts to break down a little bit. Morgan revealed a lot of information to us about her relationship with her boyfriend, Jared Baum. She said Jared pretty much controlled everything in her life. He controlled her time, all her money. She wasn't allowed to have friends that he didn't approve of. Nobody was allowed to come to the house under any circumstance. We also learned that during the time that Jared was in jail, Jared found out Morgan had a relationship with Riley. That did not sit well with Jared.
As Morgan's rapport developed with the police, she began opening up more and more. And she admitted that she had lied to the police when she said that Breezy and Riley hadn't come to her house. They did go to her house. And while they were there, Morgan said that Jared came home and he flew into a fit of rage. He tied up Breezy and Riley's hands, and he put them in a vehicle, and he drove away. And Morgan says that's the last time she saw Breezy and Riley. According to Morgan, that's all she knows. She doesn't know if they're alive, if they're dead.
But we knew that we were really close to finding these kids. And we knew that Morgan was the key to find them.
So we had Morgan in my patrol vehicle. And as we're going through, we're talking to her about, what do you know? Where, do you know where they are? You say Riley was a friend of yours. Let's try and get him home. So I noticed as we got near what's called the Tinnick Standard number 2 mine, and as we drove past there, Morgan's demeanor changed greatly. She became very, very emotional. She instantly started crying, visibly shaking. And to me, I'm kind of keying up on that, like, so this is where something might have happened. This is something that she's telling me without telling me that, something's here.
This change in her behavior was a big red flag for the police. They had to find out what it was about that area that was getting Morgan so worked up.
On March 27, 2018, we conducted a search of the area around the Tinnick Standard mine number 2.
That whole area is just full of different mine shafts. But the Tinnick Standard number 2 mine is not your typical, hole in the ground. It's a massive hole. It's about 30 feet across, about 112 feet deep. The whole mining system is about 1,800 feet deep.
We brought in a truck that had a remote camera on it that was able to be dropped down into the mine. And it goes down about 110 feet. And so as we're trying to see anything we can in the bottom of this, and we're just like, okay, nothing's here, now what? And we're looking, and we're just kind of deflated, and we're just looking as hard as we can. And then we just freeze. It was a shock. We're like, oh my gosh, what do we do from here?
We are searching the Tinnick Standard number 2 mine, and we maneuvered the camera around the bottom of the mine shaft based upon Morgan's odd behavior in the car.
I was getting ready to leave when one of the guys go, I got a body. It's just like plain as day. It appears to be a male. You could definitely see the clothing matched what Riley was reported to be last seen wearing. And so it was an emotional moment to be able to finally have that much closure. But then at the same time, we're like, we still got to find Breezy. Where's Breezy? So then we decide to try and swing that camera back and forth on this line to look down into these other shafts, and we can see another body, and it appears to be female, wearing this outfit that was reported to be what Breezy was last wearing. And so I don't know quite how to describe that emotion or what that felt like, but it was amazing.
The whole time we were thinking,
I'm moving again.
this is definitely murder.
We were fortunate enough to be able to watch them bring the bodies up. As we stood there, I was sick to my stomach. I was heartbroken. I was empty. There aren't words that can describe that feeling.
After you find out what actually happened, the sadness and everything like that, but it's just wondering why someone would do that to two teenagers.
Now that we found them, we need to know who did this and why this happened. So we had two investigators that were with Morgan. The investigators let her know that, hey, we found them. It's time to come clean. We know you know what happened. It's time for you to tell us the truth.
Finally, she'd agreed to tell us what had happened, basically reenact the scene. She describes the night that Riley and Breezy were there. They came to the house. They left, she believed, before Jared had came home. And then the next thing she knows, Jared's barging in the door saying, "I told you not to have people here. How come you lied to me?"
We know that Jared was very controlling and did not allow Morgan to have outside friends. So for Jared to find out that Riley and Breezy were there did not sit well with Jared.
He says, "Get ready, you're coming with me." So she walks out, finds Riley and Breezy, duct tape on their mouths, duct tape around their wrists, duct tape around their feet, and they're in the very back of the Jeep. And Jared instructs her, get in.
Morgan says they went to the Tintic mining shaft. There, the teens were forced out of the vehicle.
Jared begins to hit Riley, and he stabs Riley in the chest 3 times. And at that point, Riley is silent, and Morgan knew at that point he was dead.
Then he threw him in the mine shaft.
Morgan says, Breezy's just sitting there terrified. But Jared down behind Breezy and kind of puts his arm around her and he says, "It's okay, darling." And then he just slits her throat and just lets her die right there.
After he did that, he threw her into the pit too.
We strongly believed Morgan's story, so we wanted to speak to Jared. During that time, Jared was in jail on different charges, so we put him in this room. Jared denies any involvement in the murders, but based upon everything that Morgan had told us, we felt that there was enough probable cause to charge Jared with these murders. On August 15th, 2022, Jared was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Morgan was charged with obstruction of justice. She struck a plea deal with prosecutors and would spend 3 years in jail.
And as much as I don't like to admit it, Jared was clever. What's really interesting about this is the bodies were found on a ledge. Had they not been on this ledge and landed at the bottom of the mine shaft, they might not have ever been discovered.
I also do feel that because of Morgan and her willingness to assist in the investigation, that brought justice to these families.
In my mind, there's no such thing as a closure. Jared's still living, still breathing. There'll never be closure as long as he's alive. And I'm pretty sure he'll make it longer than I do, so maybe there'll be closure when I run into Riley. I miss him. And I talk to him about it every day.
I miss Breezy. I miss her personality. And I would give anything to be able to just tell her that she's loved and that she's touched so many lives, more than she can ever imagine.